Stripe recently hit a $100 billion valuation. And while there are a lot of pieces to that puzzle, one thing that often gets overlooked is their website. Because on the surface, it just appears to be another sleek, modern website like any other. But in reality, it's also a conversion machine that turns visitors into customers at scale. Now, even though their website may not be where every sale starts, it's where most people go to do their research before making their final decision. And after building over 500 websites for clients like Shopify and ABC Fitness, I can tell you that Stripe's site does something that most software companies completely miss. They don't just showcase their product. They guide buyers towards the conclusion that this is the financial infrastructure we need. That's why in this video, I'm going to break down the 4 core strategies Stripe uses on their website to turn it into a conversion engine. From how they position themselves in their product to how they build instant credibility and everything in between. This way, you'll understand exactly what converts in 2026. And hopefully, you'll be able to use some of these strategies yourself. Now, most payment company websites lead with exactly what you would expect. Things like accept payments easily and process transactions cheaper. And it makes sense because that's literally what they do, but here's the problem. When you position yourself as just another payment processor, only a little faster or cheaper, you sound exactly like every other company out there competing for the same customers. Which means even if your product is better, there's really no reason for somebody to pick you over everyone else. And that's where Stripe takes its first unique approach, because instead of just leading with what it does, it leads with what it can help you achieve. It positions itself as a partner that helps you grow, not just a platform that processes your payments. And it's this foundation that allows it to use all the other strategies we're going to be covering in this video. But first, let me show you exactly what I mean by how tactical the way Stripe positions itself really is. So I just want to take a second to break down the language and positioning that Stripe is using, starting with their hero header and how it also transpires to a couple of other pages on their site. So like I mentioned, they're using language that is not just we do X, Y, Z. They're really using language that is aspirational and speaks to the outcomes that customers can expect, while also weaving in what they do. But I think by leading with what the outcome is, it's a much more effective message, and it really differentiates them from other payment processors that offer similar things. So by saying financial infrastructure to grow your revenue, every business that is potentially using a tool like this wants to grow their revenue, right? So they're addressing it head on. Then they're backing up that claim by talking about some of the features that they offer. So accept payments, offer financial services, implement custom revenue models. But then they again tie it back at the very end to what a really cool outcome could be. So from your first transaction to your billionth, what business doesn't want to have 1 billion transactions, right? So they're doing a really good job of addressing the outcome and addressing what is offered kind of like neatly and concisely here. Also, they do it lower on the page too. So when they're introducing the facets of their software and what it can do, they're still framing it by leading with, flexible solutions for every business model, grow your business with a comprehensive set of payment and financial tools designed to work individually or together. So again, they're talking to the outcome, grow your business. And then they're breaking down very smartly the different tools, and they're using visuals as a way to also further the communication of what they're saying in these titles. So when we are highlighting something like accept and optimize payments globally, they're using visuals that highlight the fact that, there's multiple currencies here, there's multiple languages being displayed. So it speaks to what's being said, right? Visually and contextually. They do this repeated throughout each one of these blocks really smartly. And they do the design in a way for these where visually it's differentiated, but it all still feels really cohesive. And they do a really good job of that throughout the site. So from a visual and text communication standpoint, they're killing it on the homepage. But then they also do a really good job as you go through other areas of the site. So if we look at solutions and we're looking at, enterprises versus startups, they're again talking to the outcome. So under enterprises, build the next era of your enterprise, right? A lot of organizations, especially larger organizations, may be used to being stuck in doing certain things a certain way. So they're touching on that a little bit by saying, the next era of your enterprise. So like, how can we continue to evolve this thing? So I think it's really smart differentiation to a pain point that they're experiencing. They do the same thing for startups as well. So when we're talking about startups are hyper focused on growth, right? They want to be able to scale effectively, continue to grow. Stripe addresses that head on with the copy that they present on this page. And they do this throughout the site, section to section to section. But what you will never see them do is just lead with features. And that's what makes them different. And that's that's what's made them so effective and allowed them to catapult to that $100 billion valuation. Now, this brings us to their second strategy, and this one is all about building trust. And just like their positioning, Stripe puts a lot of effort into standing out from its competitors. See, when most companies in the payment space just try to build trust on their website, they do exactly what you'd expect. They put a row of enterprise logos across the homepage, add a couple of testimonials, and call it a day. And it makes sense because on paper, that's the standard playbook for looking credible. But here's the problem. When every competitor in your space is doing the exact same thing, that proof starts to blend together, which means even if your client list is genuinely impressive, it's not going to make anyone stop and pay attention to you. Now, Stripe doesn't just shove their credibility in your face to get the sale. Instead, they layer it throughout their website in a way that speaks directly to what each buyer cares about. And by using this proof to take care of specific doubts and objections as they arise, they position themselves as the most obvious, trustworthy choice. But let me show you exactly what I mean. Stripe does a really good job with social proof throughout their site. And I mean, starting with the homepage, they're already doing an amazing job. Something that I teach to our clients, team, etc., is there's a lot of different ways that you can contribute to a site with social proof. And certain customers are going to resonate with certain things more than others. So it's important to have a mix of it on your site. And Stripe's doing an amazing job of checking off all those boxes. So when you're on their website, you're on the hero header section, you can immediately see their Fortune 100 logos being displayed very prominently here. Now, to be fair, there are a lot of other companies that have these types of logos on their site, but it's still important to have them there. It's still important to have that associated value with those brands, with your brand. And it's great that they make this available and visible by default because it's like an easy way to add some of that initial credibility when you land on a page. But as you progress down the page, they insert more social proof. So, as we scroll down about halfway through the homepage, they're starting to introduce some key metrics that customers are going to latch onto that really focus on the scale and sophistication of Stripe as an organization. So 135 different currencies provided. That tells me, like, not only can you handle me and where I'm at, you can handle all of my customers. You can handle whatever scale we go into because you guys are covering everything. $1.4 trillion in payment processing volume is a crazy number, honestly. So again, it shows like their infrastructure is legit. It can handle a high volume of money coming through. 99.999% historical uptime for their services. Again, it's never going to be down. I don't have to worry about, this payment's not going to go through because the software crapped out on me, right? So again, another way to build trust. And then the 200 million subscriptions, again, if 200 million other people are using this, that is an indication to me that this is a good product for me to use as well. So some people are going to latch on to these types of metrics and put a lot of value in them more than, the logos up top. And if you think about it, the logos up top are going to be covered by a lot of businesses. A lot of businesses are going to have logos. They might not have the exact same logos, but they might have similar stature logos. But a lot of companies are not going to be able to match these types of statistics. And it's good that Stripe is highlighting these head on because that's a differentiator for them. Another area that they have social proof is that they include these case studies. And I think it's really smart. They're talking about the outcome of the case study upfront. They are also doing a good job of selecting case studies that represent different types of businesses, both in terms of scale and the type of business that they serve. So again, if you're a potential customer visiting the site and you see these case studies listed, there's likely going to be one that feels relevant to you and it's going to get you to explore more. And then last but not least, they are including testimonials on this page. A good text testimonial, especially when paired next to, a statement and using it to back up that statement, can be really powerful. People still put emphasis and index in testimonials. So again, if you can use them strategically, like they use them here, where, they're making statements about their product and then they're using the testimonial to basically back up and further the statement that's being made, you're going to have a lot of success. And they also use this as an opportunity to get a couple more logos in the view with the way that they've designed this, which I think is a nice little touch as well. So lots of different layers to the social proof that they're including on the page, but it's checking off the boxes for people and it's also layering on top of that value. So you see the logos, you see the stats, you see the testimonials, you see the case studies, all of these things are just building trust as you go down the page. And it's really just painting a picture that Stripe is the infrastructure to use if you're looking for financial infrastructure. Now, if you want to know how to build a website that converts, you can apply for our free personalized website improvement plan below. We built over 100,000 web pages for brands like Live Nation, Revlon, Boston Dynamics, which means we know exactly what it takes to turn your site into a growth engine. So if you want a detailed breakdown of what's working on your site and what's not from one of our expert team members, completely free, just click the link in the description below. But either way, having a strong positioning and credibility is just the start for Stripe, because now they have to solve a problem that every B2B SaaS company faces, and that's speaking to one type of buyer. See, an enterprise IT director evaluating Stripe has completely different concerns than a solo founder launching their first startup. Now, this is where a lot of companies fall short, because they either try to force a ton of different buyer types into a single web page, or they just avoid segmentation altogether, which in turn leaves their visitors feeling confused by the amount of information being thrown their way, or they don't think the product is what they're looking for. But Stripe does the opposite, because they've found a way to split their customer base into 3 main buyer groups and cater to them using 3 separate narrative trends, all while keeping their setup easy to understand and to navigate. So another thing Stripe does a masterful job of is breaking out their different use cases and basically talking to these different buyer personas directly. And it starts with the navigation. So if you go to solutions, they have these 3 different distinct sections. So by stage, by use case, and by industry. Each one of these are going to encourage a user to kind of like self-select and latch on to what makes the most sense for them. And each one tells a different story, because we're dealing with different buyers, different buyer pain points and desires. So they do a really good job of crafting each one of these sections for them. So if we open up enterprises and take a look at that, they start off by talking about building the next era of your enterprise. So if you're in a large scale enterprise organization, chances are things have been done a certain way for a long time. There's a lot of procedures, there's a lot of stuff in place that is legacy. So by talking about building the next era of your enterprise, it can be exciting to folks who are in these types of organizations, right? Like they've done financial infrastructure a certain way for however many years. Now we have the opportunity to do it in a new way, a modern way, a way that is, better aligned with where the company is going rather than where it's been. So they're addressing that and they're kind of piquing interest. This is like a play towards the outcome that they're looking for. So the other thing that I like is that they use the term leading. So leading enterprises use Stripe to revolutionize their business. So again, we are aligning stature with those potential customers. We include some logos and then we quickly snap into this little animation that focuses on these different grids, right? And like the specific things that we're calling out are things that are going to be really important to these types of organizations. If we flip over to the startups page, we can see that the messaging and positioning is a bit different. So we're talking about scale and growth. We're talking about how startups have transformed from startup phase to being multi-billion-dollar businesses using Stripe. So very different positioning. Instead of talking about the transforming the future, we're talking about how one can grow and really become successful using Stripe as a tool. And then rather than leading with facets of the tool, they're talking about different business types that can align with it. So again, if I'm a startup and I'm an AI startup versus a SaaS startup, this gives me a hint that it's for me and it gives me the opportunity to dive in further. On that same note, when we're talking about solutions and we're talking about the different use cases, you can see how e-commerce in this experience and what's being both said and displayed is very distinctly different than what we're seeing if we go to embedded finance, for instance, right? So each one of these is very, very much tailored to who's going to be visiting the page. So again, the key with doing these types of pages is that you really think critically about what can I put on these pages that's going to be unique and going to speak directly to the type of customer that's going to be on these pages. I think where companies fail at doing this effectively is that they call out all of these different groups, but then they really don't differentiate the content on the pages all that much. So they don't self-identify. They self-identify in the title, but then the content doesn't bring it home. So that's the difference with Stripe's site versus many others, is that they really have taken the time time to personalize each of these, both in terms of what's being said and what's being visualized, to really hone in on that buyer for each one of those groups. Now, even with the perfect positioning, credibility, and segmentation, there's still one final piece to the puzzle, and that's making the path from I'm interested to I'm ready to buy feel completely natural. See, while most SaaS websites focus on products they sell and their features to get people interested to buy or sign up, Stripe does things differently. It highlights the outcomes created by products and uses that to convince people to buy. And what makes this so powerful is that each outcome-focused section acts as its own mini conversion funnel. It opens up with a promise, it backs it up with proof, and it ends with a clear next step. So instead of overwhelming visitors with feature lists, they entice them with the outcome they want most for their business, and then take them through a logical journey that builds to one thing: a new customer. Now, here's exactly how they implement it. All right, so now let's look at a couple of examples from their site where they're kind of just like bringing all this stuff together on these deeper pages, really just adding to that conversion funnel. So when we look at something like the payment links page, you could pretty clearly just say like, oh yeah, we can create payment links easily, but they're creating more of a narrative here that I think is way more compelling. So starting with the headline, create a link, sell anywhere. Okay, great. What I think is really interesting that they do to back this up is that they have on the right-hand side an animation of a dialogue that somebody might be having with a customer, and just like how quickly, oh, okay, I'm going to receive an inquiry from a customer, and in a couple of messages, I'm like DMing them a link to pay directly, right? Like that I think is a great way of bringing the use case and real life scenario into it. And it's all happening right now in this opening frame, which is great. Then they back up the statement that they're saying, create a link and sell anywhere with some additional context in terms of, using payment links to sell online without a website, create a full payment page in just a few clicks. Then right here, we can either click create a payment link or explore the docs. So they're immediately driving you to a very specialized next step, or they're letting you do a little bit of exploration on your own. If you're not convinced in that hero section, you continue to scroll down the page. You will continue to get some more of this like layered language. So accept payments in minutes without a line of code, kind of illustrating 1, 2, 3, how easy it is, which is great. Again, with visuals to kind of reinforce, reinforcing that how easy this is. Configure your payment link in just a few clicks. So, it's highlighting the different ways that you can use this, whether it's to sell products or offer subscriptions, and it is encouraging you to create an account. So again, as I progress down the page, we're restating the same value prop a few different ways. We're continuing to keep the next step, the call to action, clearly visible in front of the user. And then we're also highlighting secondarily to the outcome some of the features that the product offers. Skipping ahead down to the testimonial section, they again do a really good job of using social proof to back up what's being said. So this example from MarkerPad that they have, in less than 5 minutes, we created a link that let us accept payments for our courses directly from our emails. We get all the power of Stripe without a single line of code. So amazing way of just backing up the statements that Stripe is making with statements that a customer can say, yeah, they actually do this and they do it really well. So if we take that same kind of mentality and we take another look at a different product like Checkout, again, they're highlighting what this is enabling you to do, how it's making things easier for you. So we built Checkout so you don't have to. Stripe's Checkout pre-built payment form, optimized conversion, embed checkout into your website direct for customers. So again, highlighting the ease of use, right, that their products provides when traditionally this stuff was pretty complicated. They're using a visual to kind of demonstrate what their checkout might look like. And then they have a 2-step call to action. You can either start now immediately or you can try a demo. So making it really simple. I also love that this kind of follows you down the page and then also kind of furthers, like the graphic is transforming to align with the messaging that's coming lower on the page. So again, speaking to the outcome, increased sales with better payments. Awesome. Designed to reduce friction. Who hates have you ever used a really difficult checkout? Did you complete the checkout? Maybe not. This is a good reinforcement that this is going to make things way easier for customers, increase the likelihood that people check out. And again, highlighting things like it's optimized for any device, built for global commerce, which is another added benefit. So they're really doing a good job of speaking to the outcomes, backing it up with features, backing it up with proof, reinforcing it with visuals. And then again, if we skip towards the end and we get to their testimonial section, they're using really good testimonials to back up the claims that they'd made previously on the page. So everyone says they have the best conversion rates, but it's something else when you can actually prove it. Within a week of starting our A/B test, we saw that Stripe checkout consistently had conversion rates that were 8% higher, so we switched. Masterclass in terms of putting together things that are relevant and tangible to customers. A lot of people can say that they have a checkout feature, that's great, but Stripe is actually going the extra mile and explaining how that checkout feature really creates good opportunities for their customers. And then they're using social proof from real customers backing up those claims. They can't really do much better than that. And that's exactly how Stripe turned their website into a growth engine that helped them scale to a $100 billion valuation. But they're just one example of what a high converting website should look like. And obviously what works for them may not work for every other business out there. Now, if you want to see how to structure your homepage, no matter what type of business you run, watch this video next and I'll see you there.